Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose. So,
we saw Borg McEnroe.
Yeah, Borg versus McEnroe. What's the story?
The story of Borg McEnroe is it's set around the rivalry of Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe, two tennis players who are real. They were real people, and still are. It's set in during the 1980 Wimbledon Championships. So Wimbledon's the tournament that everyone cares about. It's a big deal. This was going to be Borg's potential 5th win in a row, which would have broken the record. It would have been McEnroe's first. He was younger and kind of volatile, this upstart. And the story's sort of about their rivalry, how it's portrayed in the media, with Borg being supposedly a gentleman of tennis who keeps his emotions to himself and remains very calm and collected, and McEnroe having a temper famously and screaming, "You cannot be serious," and the rest of it.
Okay.
But it's very much also about their internal monologues and the way they may be more similar than you previously thought.
Yes. Okay, the film begins with this quote from Andre Agassi saying, much of the language of tennis is also the language of life. It's kind of the important things of life. And I forget, he has a whole litany of them. He lists a whole litany of them. The ones that I remember are really like break and love, right? But, he talks about how the language of tennis is the language of life, right? Of all the important things in life. So in a way, that frames the film as a journey that our protagonist and his nemesis kind of both learn. Yeah, that is kind of an important lesson in life. So what do you think that is?
Hey?
Well...
Do I think it actually, tennis serves as a metaphor? Serves?
Yeah, I mean, both of our protagonists go on a journey, they change and they learn. And they learn something about themselves and they learn something about each other. And one of the things that they learn about each other is that they're a lot alike, right? The film ends with a card telling us that later in life they become best friends and that Bjorn Borg was the best man at John McEnroe's wedding, right? So this experience bonds them. And part of what you assume bonds them is because they learn something about each other in the process of the match.
I disagree. I think the film fails to dramatise that whatsoever. I think the rivalry between the two players is barely shown. If there really was one, obviously there's supposed to be one for the sake of the film. When you see these guys interact, you see McEnroe storm into the changing room at one point, and Bjork sat there, and nothing happens. You see them not interacting at a press conference. Obviously, then they play each other. So, but
when you say you don't see them interacting, I think there's a lot of drama going on around it. So it depends on how you're defining interaction. I mean,
the fact that the film had to tell me in title cards, then they became best friends, then this happened, then that happened. That's not dramatizing it. That is telling me.
No, that's telling you the aftermath of it. But actually, I think it does dramatize those things. You see McEnroe being angry, like almost with the impression, who does he think he is? Because he's the last one in. So obviously he's special, right? And McEnroe won't accept that because he thinks he's special. So actually, there's a lot of drama in that scene. Yeah, even though they don't say anything to each other, it is dramatized.
And there is they keep watching each other on TV. Obviously, like they are interested in each other in their personal lives, but they don't cross. And this is a film which was... It's like, you remember how Batman vs. Superman was called Batman vs. Superman and they fought once? And it was like, why are you doing this? This is the same.
No, it's not the same.
It is.
My God, the whole third of the film is about their last match, which is literally one against the other, really.
And barely interesting. It actually...
Well, I suppose it's not interesting if you're not interested in tennis.
I like tennis. No, this is not about whether I like tennis or not. I wanted to be interested in this, and I like tennis, and I want to see the other tennis film that's coming out. But this film did nothing for me up until up until during that final between them, McEnroe's getting angry, and as they cross to change ends, change sides of the court, Borg says something to McEnroe. He says, "Keep your head, play your game," something like that. And it's like, oh, he was nice to him. All of a sudden, it's like, all of a sudden there was something to be interested in this match.
Well, I had a completely different experience than yours. I thought it was wonderful. And I think there's a lot going on. And actually, I think it is about, different ways of behaving, different socially acceptable ways of behaving in society. And actually, it's like, the control that Bjorn gets at the end, and he's seen as a robot and so on. And you see how hard-earned that is and what it costs him, to come across as, this natural aristocrat of the tennis court. Yeah, which he, in a way, is. He's got the talent for it. But, his personality is much more volatile. And actually, I found it particularly fascinating, as a kind of a key to understanding the person in the light of everything else that we found out about Borg subsequently, right? Like, he got arrested fucking in the toilet of a restaurant, and kind of all of these kind of, extreme behaviors that you see that throughout the film, he's learning to kind of rein himself in, to control. And actually, part of the thing is, in the film, from the Stellan Skarsgård character, the trainer, is that unless he learns to do that, he won't be able to play, right? So, and I think that's so beautifully contrasted to McEnroe, for whom those outbursts in the court is an outlet, right? It's what permits him to stay focused, as Bjorn Borg recognizes.
He recognizes at one point, but actually, there's so little of that, and what's really disappointing is that McEnroe stops doing it.
No, but I don't think that's a disappointment. I think that's a natural outcome, because that's the part where he grows. That actually kind of, in that last game, he does, what Bjorn Borg has learned to do, which, he doesn't kind of yell obscenities at the audience. He just doesn't yell obscenities at the referee. But he's still acting out. He cries, he's angry, but he doesn't take it out on other people. He doesn't abuse other people in the process of doing so.
But
and I think that's his. Well,
this is what I'm feeling with the entire film is what is the purpose?
But it's explained in the film, because actually there's that whole conversation with, what's his name, Fleming, who says, nobody likes you, right? So, and nobody wants to be like you. Yeah, and so part of, that change in the court at that time is actually, getting a standing ovation from everybody, because of how he played and how he behaved. So actually that changes how he's perceived.
But I don't know that this matters to him. Actually, I really don't. I think it's obviously the player says to him, "No one likes you. No one's going to remember you as a great, even though you are, because you act out. You have a temper." And then when he behaves himself during the final and keeps it inside and plays a good game of tennis, ultimately losing, one of the commentators says his behaviour was a credit to him, something like that. But did you really get the impression that this is something that's what counted to him? I thought it was just... The film felt like a series of really rudderless moments that didn't add up to real sort of coherent characterization.
No, I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that at all. I thought the actors were terrific, both of them. And particularly Shia LaBeouf. I thought he's just so impressive, because he's someone whom I don't like. I don't think he's attractive. And I don't like his persona. And recently I've seen him in two films. The first one was American Honey, where I thought he was phenomenal.
That was torture.
Yeah, I thought that was a great film. And here he's just fantastic, really. So I thought both actors were. So actually, I think there's quite a very considerable range of character, and it's very nuanced. The film, like, you get a sense, for example, with McEnroe's father, how controlling he is, how he begrudges, how he kind of like reins in compliments, right? And then there's all those glances. It's all really told through glances in the last game, right? So I thought, I kind of, I wouldn't say I love it. You know, it wouldn't be true to say that I think it's a fantastic film, but I enjoyed it very much, and I think it's very well done, and I love the whole look of it.
Oh, I didn't like the look of it. I mean, I got the look of it. It really evokes this sort of beige late 70s look, and this kind of no, that's about it.
There's this wonderful image.
It's so unremarkable.
I didn't think it was unremarkable. I think it actually is a very skilled film. There's this wonderful image at the beginning which is repeated throughout the film, which Bjorn Borg is in his apartment in Monaco, which is now his home, which I think it's interesting. And he lifts himself up on the balcony, right? And there's the Mediterranean, takes up like 2/3 of the frame. And he just lifts himself up, and you could see how he's tightly wound up and on the precipice, that he could fall from this balcony, right? That kind of, you get a point of view of the swimming pool below. The swimming pool below won't hold him, right? Like, so, this kind of sense of being, wired up, and, this enormous strength and this enormous self-control and the sense of always being on the precipice, I thought was kind of like a metaphor for the film, really. And it does it visually, so...
you picked out one shot. Now do the rest.
Well, how many do you need?
I mean, more than that. There isn't a moment in this film that I'm going to remember. There's not a part of the film I'm going to want to revisit.
That's an interesting thing. That's probably true.
I found it very just uncompelling. If that's
but
the
is
word.
that? I mean, I don't know. Is that a consideration anyway? I mean, does well, I suppose wanting to watch a film again is always a good sign.
No, I know what you mean. Like, it's not like it should have... It's not like I should expect a stand-up moment here or there or whatever, but I found myself thinking, this is just so unremarkable. This is not quite by the numbers. It is attempting to do something. I think the idea that these guys are essentially identical on the inside, but present themselves very differently, is an interesting idea. But I think it's laboured. I don't think it's enormously original, but that's not a huge sort of negative point if it can be executed interestingly, which I don't think it is. And I don't feel that the stakes, while the stakes are reasonably clear, they don't feel that important, despite the fact that this is going to be Borg's 5th Wimbledon title in a row, which breaks the record. It's a huge deal, and there's an awful lot of pressure on him for that reason. I feel like, well, he's won 4. I mean, he's good. And McEnroe,
because the film tells you, if I lose this match, my winning 4 will count for nothing. All that people will remember me for is having lost this one.
Possibly, but I think he's being a drama queen.
Well, no, and I disagree with you. And actually, I do think the film is doing something really, really fascinating with the class element. I really do, because, so on the one hand, what you have is like this tall Nordic blonde, he looks like a Norse god, and you have this curly-haired, wired New Yorker, right? And actually, the curly-haired, wired New Yorker who is loud and acts out and so on, he's meant to be like everyman or something, whereas, the tall Nordic person, he's just meant to be like an aristocrat of tennis. And actually, the film really shows you that it's the opposite. That, Bjorn is living in a council estate. He's practicing tennis, in front of the garage door of the estate he lives in. He's from a working class family. Whereas, McEnroe is getting all these special teachers and playing chess, and he's a math genius. And, it's from this, upper middle class family in New York, right? So I think what it does is very interesting. It mismatches.
But then what is the point of that? What's the upshot of that?
Well, the upshot of that is that they're still very similar, right? And they both learn about each other. But actually, I think it's kind of revealing, that neither of the two legendary players of this period, in what the film makes a great point out of telling you is a gentleman's game, are gentlemen. Yeah, and yet they somehow both learn to, in a way, become a different type of gentleman, which is, so, it's like, noble of heart, or noble of spirit, or, noble of will, rather than the class thing that is kind of, so much at play in the under path of the film.
The gentleman thing I thought was discarded. I sort of saw it, but it felt actually the film discarded it. Particularly when it says at one point tennis players are rock stars now, which is like, and it's the film. It's making the point that this was a gentleman's game, but it seems to be changing. It's actually they both behave more like rock stars. The one of them acts out, the other one's going off to nightclubs. In fact, they both go off to nightclubs.
I think that aspect of the nobility and the effort and the skill is played out in the court. And yes, it does show.
It certainly isn't that final game, to be fair, when they both play a really creditable game against each other and they both come back from negative positions and so on.
So, and actually I think the thing about, going to Studio 54 and nightclubs and stuff, I thought it was kind of interesting, but not really, because the film just doesn't have the budget to do it well, really. So, you have like a little curtain and some disco lights, and it's meant to be Studio 54. Or actually, some of the aerial shots of Wimbledon, you see they're practically a video game, right? So, like the CGI is so poor that the budget doesn't stand for it. But
I actually didn't think that. I thought maybe you mean like establishing shots?
Yeah,
not of the actual games.
No, not of the actual games. Right. The establishing shot of the stadium, which is very beautiful and eerie, and actually it's all populated, but it's populated by figures that look like they're in a video game, really. Anyway, I wouldn't hold that against the film. I'm just saying, really, that for me, all of those things are kind of important in delineating period, but through no fault of their own, they're not, for me, the better parts of the film. They're not, they're not very well done, really, or not very convincing. But you see how they do become like rock stars, and in a way, how Bjorn Borg, who's very intent on winning, is what he least likes about it. It's like that bit where he goes in for a coffee, and he doesn't have money, and he works to pay for his coffee. You have a moment of peace and rest and kind of a fulfillment, really.
I kept thinking about Rush. Have you seen it?
I have seen Rush.
Ron Howard.
I love Rush.
And it's the Niki Lauda, James Hunt rivalry. And I kept thinking about how that was a film that actually showed real rivals, which is not to say they didn't also have a friendship and so on and so forth, but the film portrays them as he's having a really deep, quite intense rivalry. But it dramatises it. They're constantly in conflict, and everything has a function in that film. But I think this film is much more aimless.
Well, we can agree on that, but I think it's, in a way, it's not quite a fair comparison, because I do think that Rush is a truly great film. Yeah, I mean, it didn't do very well at the box office. I think it's partly because, that story isn't familiar to Americans, really. But I think actually that Rush is a truly great film. I mean, I think it's an extraordinary film.
Maybe it's unfair to compare to that, but there are obviously comparison.
Well, yes. I mean, they're two athletes and, they're two rivals. But, it is a different story. But neither of them dies here. There's a different sense of danger and risk.
Well, yeah, there's that as well. I mean, the stakes are far more exciting.
Yes, and I think just the Rush, the budget and things like that is just incomparable. I mean, that's a big Hollywood production.
That's not what my issue is. My issue really comes down to the writing and the characterization, and the fact that in this I am struggling to appreciate what there is to be interested in with these characters. I didn't feel it. I didn't feel interested enough in either one of them. Like, it kept me going, but it was far from compelling. I don't think you're right that when you say they learned from each other. I don't think that's true.
Well, I think if you'd see the film again, you think that is the whole point.
No, they hug at the end. Well, they played a good game against each other, but have they learned from each other?
I think
their rivalry hasn't been intense enough throughout the film for their kind of reconciliation at the end to have any.
I
real
don't know
impact.
how you can say that, because you have McEnroe kind of throughout drawing on his hotel room, and plotting how he's going to end up with Borg, right? So, they both want to be number one right from the beginning. Actually, it's made such a point that the trainer says that as soon as he stops being number one, he'll stop playing, which is what happens, right? So,
but that's got nothing to do with McEnroe. That's about himself. They're both really thinking about themselves. They're focused on the other because the other is the person who their main enemy.
Each wants to be number one,
but they're
and
not.
The other is their obstacle.
But McEnroe doesn't hate Borg because he's Borg. He just wants to be number one, and Borg doesn't hate McEnroe because he's McEnroe. It's just that he's the guy who could stop him from winning the fifth time.
But they both change. I mean, I don't understand how you can't see that, because the last bit of dialogue is that how up to this point everyone has made all the decisions for Borg, including their wedding, and he just lets it go. And at the end, he takes control over all of those decisions, right? So he's changed.
Great.
What do you mean, great? So they've both changed. They've both changed through.
And what about his rivalry with McEnroe has affected that change? Actually, the change really just comes out of nowhere. There's no moment where he goes, "No, this has got to change. I'm going to switch on and take control." He doesn't. He doesn't at all. He fires his trainer in a bit of a temper tantrum, and then the trainer comes back and he's like, "Yeah, I needed you here." Oh.
No, I think there's much more at stake than that. I think it's about valuing the past. It's about valuing the contributions. It's about knowing the mechanism, because he tells the trainer, "I know what you're doing. Stop doing it. I can take care of myself now." That's a key line. Mr. Glass. Anyway,
I think it's.
Let's shift register, because
I think it gets you. I think it gets. You are meeting it more than halfway. The film gets you 20% of the way there, and it asks you to do the rest of the work. If that's what I think, it's really empty.
Okay, look, we're going to disagree about this. So kind of. I think more highly of it than you do. Yeah. But why were you so angry at the end of it? You came storming out of the theater.
Well, that was slightly misguided. I didn't storm out. I was just in a bit of a mood because I thought, fuck me, that was not very good. But the reason was, and this was misguided, is because I'd looked it up. I looked it up just to find out what the title was, because I didn't know if it was Borg McEnroe or Borg versus McEnroe. It turns out it's both, depending on where you are in the world. And on the front page of Google, like, it had they brings up relevant stuff, and it had a Guardian headline which said something like Guardian review a 5-set thriller, some stupid pun like that. And I thought, oh right, okay, this is going to be good then. And it wasn't. But then I did check while we were on the way back. I did just have a quick look, and other reviews have got it as like it's like a 7 out of 10 type of movie. So it was just that one which set me up for thinking this is going to be great. And it wasn't.
I mean, to be fair, when I was a child, the Montreal Star, their TV listings, and they would have summaries in the back page of the films, right? So, they do reviews and so on inside. But at the back, they would have all the movies playing that day, and then they would give them stars. And when I was a child, I always used to say, I always used to look forward to the 4 stars and the 2 stars, but kind of keep away from the 3 stars, because the 3 stars were like films that were very worthy, but, hadn't been well realized, or films that were too complex, but there was something missing, right? Kind of those films that you kind of, that film buffs cheer on, but that really don't end up pleasing, the standard audience. And I felt that this was one of those 3-star films. That for me, there was enough in it to kind of to keep me going and to keep me interested. And I love the look of the film, and I love the performers and so on. But it's true that there wasn't, there wasn't the point where you feel like kind of enthralled or moved, or, the way that really great films kind of make you do so. so it's not trashy enough for me to be like a 2-star. We're just like, go along for the ride and enjoy all the trashy aspects of it. And it's not quite a great, a great film.
It's
so
certainly not quite.
It's kind of, in the middle there, in an undefined kind of danger zone, I suppose, for audiences, in terms of audiences. But I'm very glad I saw it, and I found it very skilled.
Yeah, see, 73% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's more like it. The final match, which really should be the culmination, was so disappointing for at least the first half. It was only when after about the set. It was the third set. That's when because McEnroe wins the first, then Borg wins the second two, and after the end of the third set, when he goes ahead, and McEnroe's frustrated, that's when Borg says something to him. He says, keep your head, play your game, whatever it is. And that's when I thought, this is a moment. Like, he's been nice to me. This isn't a rivalry quite so much. This is something else. And then the match starts to generate some tension for me. And then, my heart started pounding. I mean, it started to get good. And then you get to a tie break where Borg is getting match point after match point, and McEnroe keeps on keeping himself in the game. It's fantastic. That's really good. And actually, what that does quite effectively, I will say, is what sports films always have to do at some point is explain the sport.
Yes.
And this is something that absolutely everyone is going to know. I mean, boxing films don't really have to do that anymore. But unless it's something that absolutely everyone is going to know, then the film has to at some point say, this is how the game works. And that's always a bummer, because it kills the movie when that happens. You go, just take a second, guys, and we've got to explain the rules. And in this film, they don't do it, essentially, with the tennis. It's actually not that important. The specific results of the games are not that important. It's just who wins and who doesn't. But then you get to the tie break, and you do have this commentator going, okay, now, lads, sit down. We just need to tell you how a tie break works, because there are people who watch tennis who don't know how a fucking tie break works. But it does it very quickly, and it does it with these on-screen superimposed scorecards, which go 1-2, 1-2, ramping up till it's 7-6. Does it very quickly, and you really get the point. Actually, that was a guy I handed it to. That made something that is normally really crap into quite an efficient piece of filmmaking.
See, you're coming around.
No, I thought that at the time. Like I say, I can't be too harsh on that final match, because it did start to get good. Although then, eventually, that is the heist of the film, is that tiebreak. Because eventually McEnroe wins the tiebreak and they go into a fifth set. And then in the fifth set, it does this montage with this slow music. And I'm going, what? You're killing all of the momentum.
Yes.
That was awful, with all these flashbacks to when they were kids and they're thinking about this. No.
You know what I didn't understand was at the end, when they're doing the celebration, and they sing a famous song from the period. I forget what it was called.
I don't remember.
There's that cake where everybody's slicing him in 25 different pieces, which I thought was kind of really interesting. But I kind of, I suppose I'm answering my own question, because, the being sliced, because the cake has his picture, and he is being sliced in all these different bits.
Yeah.
And then he decides to leave with his girlfriend and take back control over his life. But the song I didn't get. I didn't get why that song.
I don't know. I didn't pay that. I didn't recognize the song.
Let's see if we.
The fiance, while we're on it, gets such a hard. Remember Moneyball?
Yes.
Philip Seymour Hoffman's character is just a walking frown. She's exactly the same, isn't she? She's just this kind of naysaying sort of.
I think she's very poorly cast, actually.
I don't know that she's poorly cast, but she has a really thankless task. She doesn't have anything to do, because at least in Moneyball, Philip Seymour Hoffman, it was a really comic role, like, because Billy Bean, the Brad Pitt character, is kind of changing everything and doing all this crazy new stuff, but Philip Seymour Hoffman's character is having to take the flak publicly because he's the coach. So the fact that he only gets to frown is quite funny. He turns it into this nicely comic role. Whereas in this, there's none of that. They're trying to play it for drama, and it's boring.
Okay.
I like Shia LaBeouf. I like the fact that he's doubled down on the weirdness ever since he got called out for being a plagiarist. And he was like, well, fuck you then, look, watch this. And then he just embarked on a 7-year career of doing weird shit.
I know, but I kind of, I mean, I think in a way he's become so good.
Yeah.
He has become like a kind of, you know, a character actor, really. Because I, you know, as a star, I never liked him. I can't warm to him.
It's like they tried to turn him into a star when he really wasn't one.
Yes. He was very charismatic in the Indiana Jones film.
I didn't see it.
So I think, you know, there were hopes for him. I didn't see the Transformer films. I couldn't stand them. So
I didn't see them because I couldn't stand them.
Well, I saw bits on TV. I can't stand them.
Yeah.
I think
he was. To be fair, he made them work. I mean,
yeah,
you know, that he was the best thing for those films. Put it that way. You know?
Right. It's a bit telling that he doesn't seem to have had any other big hit outside of those.
Let's find out.
Let's find out.
Films where he actually like really counted. Was he?
He has to be the star of it for it to count. So
It was like, so he started off with things like Holes, I, Robot, Constantine, and he was playing smaller characters.
yes,
Disturbia, he was the main guy. That wasn't a big hit. Transformers obviously is huge.
Indiana Jones is the big star.
Eagle Eye tried to be a hit and it was crap.
Yeah.
Wall Street 2, no.
That was a flop.
It wasn't very good.
So actually, he hasn't had
He hasn't. Fury, Lawless.
He's very good in Fury, though. He's a second banana. He's very good in Lawless, though that's a minor part as well. And Tom Hardy's so much better.
Eagle Eye. Did you see this thing when I watched that film? It was awful. 2008, right? But there's an interview. It's all about sort of spying and the CIA and technology and rubbish. But he did an interview on Leno, where he said he was talking to some NSA guy or CIA, and he said, we've got all your phone calls. And LaBeouf goes, nah, and he goes, yeah, I'll get your phone call. And so he just finds one of Shia LaBeouf's phone calls recorded, and it's some intimate phone call where he's talking about what are you wearing and all the rest of it.
My God.
It's like, fuck me, that's scary. And that was 2008. And then when was Snowden? 2014, 2015? When Snowden all happened?
Yeah.
But no one paid attention. People should have been
There you
listening to Shia LaBeouf a long time ago.
Anyway, Mike, let's end it here. I'm tired now.
Yeah, well, I mean, being wrong really tires a guy out.
Yes, it does, doesn't it, you poor thing?
I'm right in the